August 2019. Two blacked-out vehicles moved north on the M1 motorway, unnoticed by most, but hidden inside one of them, beneath a modified steel floor, was a shipment that would change everything. Dozens of assault rifles, silencers, pistols, and ammunition, all illegally smuggled, worth over £2 million in street value. The arrest would make headlines. But it wasn't the beginning. It was the final breath of something much bigger. This empire didn't begin with bullets. It started with a phone, a moment of pride, a video that should never have been filmed. 3 men laughing around a dining table. 150. Zero in cash. Military-grade weapons lying beside designer watches. It wasn't just arrogance. It was evidence. It exposed something the public had never seen. A shadow supply line that stretched from Sofia to Sheffield. From Croatia's underground markets to Birmingham's back streets, a pipeline run by 3 interlinked cells. The suppliers, the couriers, the converters. At the center of it all, Ethan Maddox, a man with no criminal record, no social media, and no fingerprints on anything until now. Because behind the shuttered fronts and modest homes of Northampton, a machine had been operating, and that machine was about to break. It started with a celebration, a careless one. For Ethan Maddox, things were running too smoothly. Over 3 years, he had transformed a failing logistics business into the core of Britain's most covert, illegal weapons network. He didn't need to advertise. Word travelled fast in the underworld. You needed a modified Glock. Ethan had it. You wanted a Czech Scorpion with 200 rounds. He'd make it happen, no questions asked. But with growth came confidence. And with confidence came exposure. The celebration happened in a modest townhouse on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. Just a few people. No flash. No parties. Just quiet music. Bottles of whiskey. And a table stacked with cash and crates. Alongside Ethan sat his most trusted partner, Scarlett Hale, the woman who turned broken-down rifles into killing machines. She was sharp, calm, calculated, but even she didn't see it coming. That night, one of their couriers, Dylan Shaw, filmed a short clip, 29 seconds long, meant to show off their success. It was never posted, just shared between a few in the room. But the damage was already done. Unbeknownst to them, Dylan's phone had already been flagged in a broader surveillance operation gunned by the National Crime Agency. The operation, codenamed Ironvault, had been underway for over a year. And now, the agency had everything they needed. In the video, 150. Zero stacked in neat piles. 2 open crates, marked in Bulgarian Cyrillic, filled with handgun parts. Faces, clear, laughing, relaxed. Location tags. In 48 hours, analysts traced the flat to an address already of interest. Heat signatures matched. Surveillance teams were deployed. Every vehicle leaving the site was tracked. The NCA didn't move fast. They moved quietly. They monitored deliveries through Ethan's shell company Maddox Haulage Limited. They watched Scarlett's converted garage, where the real work was done, where once defunct firearms were reanimated with new barrels, magazines, and serial numbers wiped clean. Phone intercepts revealed something else. A shipment was inbound. A bulk order. 300 weapons. Smuggled via a freight lorry arriving through the port of Dover. Scheduled to arrive within days. It was the biggest transfer to date. And it would be their undoing. The NCA made their call. Dawn raids were scheduled. Warrants were secured. Tactical firearms units rehearsed. But one thing remained unpredictable. Ethan himself. Because up to this point, he had stayed clean legally, financially, digitally. No fingerprints, no wire transfers, no direct links. But the video and the shipment tied him in. The final piece of the puzzle. And so, the stage was set. As the clock ticked toward August 14th, 2019, the empire Ethan Maddox had so carefully built was no longer invisible. Its core had been exposed, its leadership was compromised, and its biggest move was already being watched. They didn't know it yet, but the countdown had begun. August 14th, 2019. To the Maddox network, it was just another operation, another convoy, another run. At precisely 3:42 a.m., 3 vehicles left a private yard in Dotford. 1 van, 2 cars, all tinted, all clean. The destination, a secure warehouse in Northampton. The cargo, a shipment of illegal firearms, fresh off a freight container from Eastern Europe, packed and hidden inside a modified horse trailer. Everything had been planned down to the second. 1 car led as a scout, another followed behind, watching for any sign of trouble. In the middle, the van nondescript, with a new plate, fresh paperwork, and a custom-built false floor beneath the straw-lined trailer bed. Inside were 312 weapons, Glocks, AR variants, suppressors, and boxes of 9mm rounds. The shipment was valued at over £8, $7 million. What the team didn't know was that the entire convoy had been under surveillance since the moment the container cleared customs. A drone trailed overhead. Signal jammers were ready. Undercover cars tailing at a distance. The NCA had been watching 4 days, and they were waiting for the right moment. That moment came just outside Junction 1, 5A on the M1. A quiet stretch just before the convoy would disappear into the countryside. At 4:19 a.m., a single coded transmission crackled through the earpieces of the mobile surveillance teams. Execute. Suddenly, blue lights. A wall of unmarked vehicles cut off every escape route. The lead car was pinned. The rear was boxed in. The van never made it to the warehouse. Within seconds, the operation collapsed. There were no dramatic chases, no gunfire, no resistance, because the men inside the vehicles already knew. They'd been compromised. Inside the van, officers uncovered an arsenal unlike anything they had seen in a single domestic seizure. Every gun was individually wrapped in waxcloth, serial numbers ground off, magazines preloaded. It was a ready-to-deploy weapons cache, just for street-level deals. But for full-scale arming, it was clear this was no small-time outfit. Back in Northampton, while the arrests were unfolding, Operation Ironvault went live across the country. At 5:07 a.m., a raid team breached Scollett Holley's warehouse. Inside, they found lathes, drill presses, blueprints, and half-completed weapon modifications. Scollett was taken into custody without a word. She didn't ask why. She already knew. By 6:00 a.m., the story had started spreading not through the media, but through the underworld. Something big had gone wrong. Phones went silent. People vanished. Vehicles were burned. And as the sun rose that morning, Ethan Maddox sat in the front room of his Northampton home, a cup of tea cooling beside him. No panic, no movement. But when he saw the blue lights roll up his street, he didn't run. He simply whispered, "It's done." They had always believed they were untouchable. Ethan Maddox operated like a ghost. No fingerprints, no digital trail, no connection to the guns themselves. Scollett Hale had perfected the craft of retrofitting weapons, her name never appearing on any leases, utilities, or contracts. Every courier was disposable, every warehouse forgettable. For nearly 5 years, they had run the most advanced illegal firearms operation in Britain. And yet, it all came undone in a single morning. From the moment the M1 bust made headlines, everything shifted. It wasn't just the arrests. It was the ripple effect. Within hours, clients pulled out. Orders disappeared. Weapons already in circulation were dumped or buried. Trusted associates went silent. But it wasn't paranoia, it was fear. Because no one knew how deep the investigation had gone, or who might flip next. In the days following the raid, the NCA revealed just how extensive Operation Ironvault truly was. Over 14 months of surveillance, over 70, 0 intercepted messages, dozens of bugged vehicles, burner phones, and financial accounts traced, every hidden compartment, every shipment manifest, every conversation had been documented. And then came the footage, the one they never meant to film. That 29-second video, once just a private boast, was now being played frame by frame in a secure NCA evidence room. Faces enhanced, locations verified, background sounds isolated and analyzed. The image of Ethan, laughing over stacks of cash beside a crate of Czech pistols, had become the symbol of a criminal empire's arrogance. It wasn't just a mistake, it was an admission. And for Ethan, that changed everything. He no longer saw himself as a strategist or businessman. He saw what they saw, a man who had let pride crack the armor. Scarlett, ever more reserved, withdrew completely. She refused visitors, refused to speak during interrogations. But behind her silence, something else began to grow, resentment. In private, she had always warned Ethan about loose ends, about celebration, about couriers who didn't respect silence. And now, she was watching everything fall apart for a mistake she didn't make. Ethan knew the network wouldn't hold. The couriers were already talking. 2 of them had accepted reduced sentences in exchange for full disclosure. One had even offered to wear a wire inside holding. The NCA didn't need to break the empire. It was breaking from the inside. Scarlett and Ethan were separated in custody, each held in isolation, each shown a timeline, every shipment, every phone call, every wire transfer. Neither denied their role, but neither admitted everything. The real shift, though, wasn't just in the evidence. It was in the tone. This was no longer just about weapons. It was about power, about control, and about the illusion that anyone could run a £50 million arms operation without consequence. For the first time, Ethan stopped seeing the network as a machine. He saw it for what it had always been: fragile, human, and already falling apart. For months, detectives believed the operation's backbone was Ethan Maddox, calm, composed, unshakable. But as they dug deeper, another name began surfacing, one that hadn't stood out before: Leo Wren. Leo wasn't flashy. He didn't handle shipments. He never touched a weapon. Officially, he was a financial consultant with a spotless record and a registered office in Milton Keynes. Unofficially, he was the accountant behind the empire, the money man. He processed profits through fake shell companies, laundered cash through overseas casinos, and moved 6-figure sums through crypto wallets and real estate deals. And now, with the core leadership in custody and the network crumbling, Leo saw a way out, or perhaps a way up. In the chaos that followed the M1 bust, Leo vanished. His phone went dead. His office was emptied overnight. Detectives suspected he'd fled the country. But a week later, he walked into a solicitor's office in central London. Quiet, alone. He asked for immunity. In return, he offered everything. You don't need their confession, he said. You need the books. What Leo delivered over the next 72 hours stunned even the most seasoned investigators. A detailed breakdown of every laundering route, names of silent partners, dates, amounts, offshore accounts, and most importantly, proof of supply chain links reaching beyond Europe into the Middle East and North Africa. With Leo's cooperation, Operation Ironvault expanded into Phase 2. Warrants were issued across 6 countries. 2 arms brokers in Serbia were arrested. A converted munitions warehouse in Morocco was seized. And at home, 3 retired military engineers connected to Skollet's weapons lab were brought in for questioning. But Leo's betrayal didn't just change the investigation, it changed Ethan. Until then, he believed silence was strength, that if he held firm, if Skollet held firm, the damage could be contained. But when news of Leo's cooperation reached him, that belief shattered. Leo hadn't just sold them out, he'd revealed how exposed they really were. How vulnerable. The empire hadn't been bulletproof. It had been held together by loyalty and the illusion of fear. Now, the fear was gone. Skollet refused to speak. Not a single word. Even as charges multiplied. Even as Leo's documents showed her signature on forged import manifests. Ethan, however, began to shift. Not all at once. Slowly. Subtly. He started asking questions in interviews. He challenged timelines. He pointed out inconsistencies in what the NCA believed. And though he hadn't offered a deal, investigators noticed a change. He no longer saw himself as a leader fighting to protect his team. He was now a man trying to protect himself. The network had cracked. The loyalties had crumbled. And in that vacuum, the last opportunity left was survival. Inside HMP Belmarsh, where the high walls held more than just men, they held secrets, silence, and shame. Ethan Maddox spent his days watching, not speaking, not reacting, just watching. He watched as the media painted him as the mastermind behind a £50 million weapons ring. He watched as Skollet Hollay's name was dragged through headlines. The Queen of Conversions, once a military technician, now branded as a national threat. He watched as Leo Wren, the quiet man behind the numbers, disappeared into witness protection, trading truth for freedom. And slowly, something inside him began to shift. Ethan had always considered himself disciplined, a tactician, not a gangster. He never glorified the weapons. To him, they were product, inventory, logistics. He wasn't driven by power or revenge. He was driven by control. But control, he realized, was just an illusion. One betrayed text, one courier with a phone, one accountant who folded. That's all it took. Each week in the prison library, he pored over books on psychology, systems theory, criminal enterprise, not out of boredom, but because he was trying to understand what went wrong, not in the system, but in him. It wasn't the police that beat him, it was his pride. Ethan began speaking more during interviews, not giving confessions, but offering fragments, timelines, discrepancies that complicated the prosecution's narrative. It wasn't strategy, it was ego, resurfacing under the mask of cooperation. But investigators saw the truth. Ethan wasn't helping. He was rewriting the story to make himself less monstrous, less involved, less responsible. And yet, even as he tried to reshape the image, something deeper began to grow. Regret. Not for the business, not even for the weapons, but for the lives around him. Skollet, still silent, still refusing every offer. Dylan Shaw, 22 years old, sentenced to 9 years for transporting crates he never opened. A courier named Tommy Miles, who took his own life after arrest, unable to face the shame his parents felt. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the weight, not just of steel bars, but of choices. And still, the outside world moved on. New arrests, new seizures. Operation Ironvault was now a European task force. His name was a cautionary tale in MI5 briefings. And yet inside, time stood still. By the 3rd month in Belmarsh, Ethan stopped asking about Skollet, stopped contesting the narrative, stopped pretending. He began writing letters. To no one specific, just letters. about systems, about cracks, about the human need for legacy, and how easily it becomes greed. The man who once built a silent empire was now just another inmate. But his story was only just beginning to echo. 1 year after the M1 bust, the courtroom was silent. Ethan Maddox, dressed in a plain grey suit, sat between two guards. No tie, no emotion. His eyes scanned the gallery, looking for anyone in particular. Just looking. Scarlett Hale refused to appear in person. Her sentencing was conducted via video link from an undisclosed location in the women's wing of HMP Bronzefield. Her face remained blank, her voice calm as the verdict was read. The charges were overwhelming. Conspiracy to possess firearms with intent to endanger life, money laundering, export violations, membership in a transnational criminal organization. As the judge listed them, the courtroom remained frozen as if the weight of each word held the air in place. But it was the sentencing remarks that cut deepest. You believed you were smarter than the system. You built an empire not of drugs, but of weapons designed to disappear, to maim, to kill. But even the most efficient machine can be undone by its own creators. And in the end, your downfall was not law enforcement. It was pride. Ethan received 22 years. Scarlett, 18. Leo Wren walked free under a protection order. His name sealed in records. His cooperation deemed essential. Dozens of others were sentenced in the weeks that followed. Drivers, couriers, engineers, warehouse managers, all part of a machine they thought they understood until it turned on them. But beyond the courtroom, something else was shifting. The public had questions. How did such a network operate so long? How did military-grade weapons flood towns without notice? And what does it say about the systems meant to protect us? Investigative documentaries followed. Parliament raised the issue. And across the country, communities once oblivious to the undercurrent of arms trafficking began to listen more closely. The story of Ethan Maddox wasn't just about crime. It became about visibility, about how silence can be bought, how trust is exploited, and how easy it is to look away until the consequences are unavoidable. Inside prison, Ethan faded into routine. He worked in the library. He rarely spoke. But those letters he had once written, those strange, reflective pieces about systems and legacy, found their way to a journalist. They were raw, honest, regretful. Yes, but not begging for forgiveness. Just searching for understanding. One line stood out. I thought building something meant I was winning, but I never asked what I was building it for. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. In the end, the empire fell, not with gunfire, not with betrayal, but in silence, under pressure, like all things built too tightly, too secretly, and too far from the truth. What remains of a man when the empire he built is gone? Only the questions. The story of Ethan Maddox is not just about illegal weapons or a criminal empire. It's about the illusion of control. In his mind, everything was managed: each courier, each crate, each bank transfer. He believed systems, when built well enough, could shield him from consequence. But no system is immune to human nature. Ego cracks the surface. Pride leaks through. One careless moment, a phone, a photo, a laugh, and the illusion collapses. Control isn't power. Silence isn't safety. And success without accountability is a ticking clock. Whether it's in crime, business, or life, the lesson remains the same: build on truth, or prepare to fall hard, because even the most intricate structures, when built on lies, can't bear the weight of time. Empires don't just fall when exposed. They begin falling the moment their leaders believe they're untouchable. Thank you for watching until the end. I truly hope that my true crime stories help you relieve some of life's stress and give you a clearer understanding of criminal psychology. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a positive comment to support UK True Crime documentary. See you next time.